Let's bring in Daniel Rubenstein. He's a former advisor to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and joins us from Tel Aviv. Daniel, President Trump has been very clear in saying he wants the war in Gaza to end. If you were still presidential advisor, would you recommend Netanyahu to listen to Trump today in order to keep this important ally on side?
We certainly want the war to end. This is a shared goal. This is not a one-sided goal of the United States that Israel doesn't share. Israel does want this war to end. The problem is that the Hamas terrorist army continues to control significant territory in the Gaza Strip, and the policy of the Hamas terrorist army is that Israel must be destroyed. So it's very hard to end a war when it's a one-sided ending. Hamas will also have a say. Just yesterday, Hamas fired rockets from Gaza into an Israeli border village that was attacked on October the 7th. So we seem stuck where Hamas continues to hold hostages and Hamas continues to call for the destruction of Israel and to fight for it.
Netanyahu said his negotiation team in Doha has been given, quote, clear instructions to reach an agreement, but he earlier said Hamas' response to the draft proposal contained unacceptable demands. So where do we stand?
The details are not known, but the bigger picture that's been reported seems to indicate that what Israel and Hamas are negotiating is how many hostages can Hamas continue to hold in underground dungeons to torture them and starve them. Everything that's been reported about this deal is that it will only be a partial release. There are a total of 50 hostages still in Gaza, some living and some dead. This deal would only see the release of half of them. Hamas refuses to release all the hostages and lay down its arms and let a better future take hold that will not see a terrorist army governing the Gaza Strip. That is the big picture we need to focus on. What we are trying to do is get the hostages out of Gaza. They are being tortured. Israel is willing to pay a ransom to see the safe return of its citizens that Hamas took from their homes nearly 2 years ago. And we need the whole world to say with a clear voice, release the hostages, lay down your weapons, and let's build a better future.
But what about the reported clause that the UN would resume delivering aid in Gaza? Do you see the Israeli government agreeing to this?
I see it as negotiable. The Israeli government is willing to pay this kind of ransom in order to achieve the safe return of its citizens who were stolen from their homes. But this is the problem with the UN's aid mechanism. It has seen the strengthening of the Hamas terrorist army. The UN is relying on local employees inside Gaza, inside Hamas-controlled territory. The aid, the food and supplies, is sent into Hamas-controlled territory, and Hamas taxes the shipment and the sale of these supplies, and it uses that money to recruit new fighters for its terrorist army and to pay the people who are holding the hostages. So what the United States and Israel have done recently is set up a different mechanism, a nonprofit organization that does not ship food and supplies into Hamas-controlled territory, but instead requires that people from Gaza come and get it and bring it home. This prevents Hamas from using money to prolong the war, which has gone on for far too long, and we want to see it end.
Now, there are many humanitarian organizations who are very skeptical with regard to this new aid distribution scheme, but negotiations require give and take. Presumably, the remaining hostages are Hamas' only leverage. Do you really think they will agree to release them all if at the same time it means Israel will continue its campaign in Gaza in the future?
No, I do not see a way for Hamas to release all of the hostages. Hamas has no incentive to release all of the hostages because it's very clear that we cannot live side by side with a terrorist army that wants to destroy us. What remains is to offer the Hamas terrorist army safe passage out of Gaza. They can escape with their lives if they let the hostages go. In order to achieve this outcome, we need everyone to raise their voice and tell not just Hamas, but also Hamas's backers who are in Doha, Qatar, that the Hamas terrorist army, its leaders are in Doha right now. These leaders must be extradited to face trial for crimes against humanity. This is the only way that the war can end if there is more pressure on Hamas's backers, and we hope that we can make separate deals with the individuals who continue to hold hostages and let them know that this is the only way out because there's nowhere else to go.
Is Israel using its current military success, if you will, to stick to a standpoint that is not very compromising?
I think there is room for compromise, but not on the fundamental issues. There is no room for compromise on the long-term vision that Hamas cannot remain the government of Gaza. Hamas is a terrorist jihadist army that wants to see the destruction of Israel. We cannot allow a situation where they continue to remain the government of Gaza, but we are willing to pay a ransom to allow the safe return of our people, our citizens, who were taken from their homes nearly 2 years ago and continue to be held in underground dungeons. Now, in the past year and a half plus, Hamas and its backers have been dealt heavy blows, specifically the Iranian regime itself, which has seen its nuclear program become less militarized. The Hezbollah terrorist army is no longer right up on Israel's borders. Even the Houthi pirates in Yemen are firing less than they used to, although they continue to do so. So I think when Hamas looks out at the rest of the world, it sees itself isolated, but not isolated enough. There are some key countries that continue to provide support to Hamas, and they need to be called out, and we need to pressure them to release the hostages and end the war.